I'm about to chat to Sahar Hashemi, who is the co-founder of Coffee Republic. Created in 1995, she is the most phenomenal woman who brought coffee to our high street well before anybody else. I have had the pleasure of talking to her a few times. She's been on my podcast, she's been at the Congregation of Inspiration, and today she's going to chat to us through this uncertain period that we're all traveling. She's a huge fan of small businesses and especially female entrepreneurs. And so I cannot wait. She's like a dose of medicine every time I speak to her, to have a really great chat about what she thinks about the high street moving forward and what would she say to all female entrepreneurs out there. Cannot wait.
Hi everyone, I'm Sahar. I founded Coffee Republic and I've written a few books on entrepreneurship, and I'm so looking forward to speaking to Holly later on. See you all then.
Hiya, how are you? Very well. This is my first Instagram live, would you believe it?
I'm so happy. We've had quite a few firsts, doing this. It's quite a new thing, and it was my first when I started this about 103 days ago. Yeah. You get used to it as long as technology is on your side.
Yes, I can't imagine a better person to do it with than you. So I'm very, very pleased.
I just love you. The whole team, honestly, Sahar, we're going to get into this, but the whole team is like, do you understand how much we love Sahar? And I'm like, I know. So listen, I just wanted to ask you, Sahar, before we get into other things, just personally for you, how have you found this period of time?
Well, actually, Holly, I found it very difficult, I have to confess. Right at the beginning, at the end of March, I was absolutely devastated, just completely floored by it. I just, my life as I knew it ended. I sort of built up all this energy. I'm sure, like so many people, we worked so hard, and then suddenly it's just destroyed. And it really floored me, and I was surprised. It sort of almost took kind of all my energy away. And, for the first 10 days, I think at the end of March, as everything got cancelled and, my diary emptied, I was angry and I was almost resisting it, and I just couldn't deal with it. And then at one point, I just surrendered. And you sometimes just have to surrender and just give in to the new lifestyle. And, I was still doing very much at the beginning my usual routine, of getting up really early, going to the park with the dog. I was doing everything like normal. Then I was like, actually, it's not normal anymore. I've got to completely change my routine. So I sort of changed my routine and became much calmer and sort of sat in the garden when it was nice. And I just sort of went with it. And it actually made it really lovely, surrendering to it. And not, letting myself go on the news the whole time and, watch what was going on and get angry about what was around. And so I went through this period, I think. And I think, it was such an abnormal situation that it's how we dealt with. It was the most awful crisis for us all to deal with. It was almost like a bereavement, wasn't it? I mean, what happened?
It really was. And did you feel the same? So a number of women that you will know, like fellow entrepreneurs, almost said that they had never been in a situation, and I know this for me, they'd stopped. I mean, they didn't understand. I mean, I say stopped. I didn't necessarily, I haven't stopped, but that sort of mentally, that thing that we had, that always there's a fire burning. And then suddenly, as Makan was saying, she had to slightly surrender. And then suddenly she was like, my gosh, I don't think I've been this close to my soul, who I am, for a very, very long period of time. So I felt like a lot of founders have used this time to, when's the last time you sat in the garden in the weekday? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And not travel. But I mean, Holly, I admire you because I think, I almost went into a shell and I just couldn't do anything. I felt like there was nothing for me to share. Normally I love sharing. I love sort of passing on the lessons. And I just felt like there was nothing to give. And I just admired you because you never gave up. You kept the energy, because I think we all needed someone to be out there, talking about it. And you genuinely, I so admire you because you didn't. And I'm sort of much more guilty of that. I really just kind of almost became quite sort of complacent and just, I just couldn't look forward. Well, I'm happy the phase is over. I have to say that phase is finally over.
It is finally over. And thank you for saying that. You know what? I actually think it happened within 48 hours, that it didn't even let me do that. I think if it had lasted a bit longer, potentially I would have been the same, but it was always like that thing. And, you know, you wake up, and we're going to talk about small businesses that you, and entrepreneurship that you support. But, you know, there is a lot of people out there that were in that same boat that we have been, possibly with less experience, just thinking, how am I going to navigate this? But before we start on those things, two things I want to cover: women in business, and I would love to chat about the high street with you and sort of small business, because of course you brought, as I was saying to everyone, coffee shops to the UK high street, and fundamentally you captured a new customer. And I love it when you tell, you know, you've told the story about the bank managers basically telling you it would never happen, we're a nation of tea drinkers, what you're talking about, and you showed them, and it really is going to be a new era of a new customer potentially post-COVID, and the consumer potentially changing again. Now, I would love to hear from your experience. What do you think will happen with consumer behavior, but also what you think it potentially means to our high streets?
Gosh, I mean, Holly, if only we knew. You know, all I know is just that we're still the same people we were before this. You know, we're still craving. I mean, I can't wait. When the shops opened, I actually got emotional. I couldn't believe it when things opened. I mean, the other day on Saturday, I went past our local Italian and I could see them setting the table. I'd actually burst out crying because it was just so lovely. I felt like life coming back. You know, people cleaning their shops and cleaning outside their restaurants was so lovely, because fundamentally we're the same people. So I don't really buy into this whole thing as the new normal and people are going to change. I mean, why would people change? You know, we're the same with the same desires. We need the same things. And I find even now, you know, as things open, I go and sit in a restaurant, or I go and sit in a supermarket, I go shopping. We sort of forget about all those rules, don't we? We revert back to our old behaviors. So I think, you know, it's, you know, we mustn't panic and think we've got a whole new consumers. You know, it's still the same consumers. Yeah, you know, people are a bit more scared. People are going to shop differently. Maybe, you know, the budgets are smaller now. We've all, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty. So we haven't got the same spending power. But essentially, we're the same people and we want the same things. And we can't wait to go back to how things were, you know, what our heart and soul wants and needs, really.
I really agree. I'm wondering, though, whether there will be a change for, you know, it's not really the coffee money, because that is social, it's a treat, you know, you look forward to it, but more the landfill, more the wasteful pounds that we used to spend. Absolutely. I potentially think that might be a change, because almost that goes hand in hand, doesn't it, with budget restraints within your household. You know, if I'm going to spend that money, is it going to be on something that lasts? Is it more quality? Am I going to put it into, you know, a restaurant rather than, you know, just eat? You know, am I going to go down and support my local cafe who's doing pizzas, and I got to know them during lockdown, and now I'm going to continue, like I'm never going to go back to doing that? So do you think that there's potentially that change that we might see?
Yes, I mean, I can only see that for myself, Holly. You know, I've sort of fallen in love with my local area, my sort of the local bit that I almost always ignored. So we become much more conscious of our homes. I'm speaking to a lot of people who are saying how appreciative they are of actually spending proper time at home and appreciating their home. And, you know, I just heard IKEA's returned the FOLO money, and I'm not surprised, because, you know, everyone's been investing, if anything, in their homes, whereas we were always so outward looking and sort of frantic, you know, out there searching for things, doing things that were meaningless. I think even now, if we all travel, we'll actually appreciate it. It's, you know, next time you're in Paris, you'd be like, oh my God, you know, Paris, how romantic, rather than, you know, we were just doing stuff automatically without really being mindful of what we were doing. And I think that's very much going to change. We're becoming more conscious. I think definitely more mindful, but, you know, not for businesses to panic as such. But, you know, what I think, Holly, is really special about a lot of the people that you're championing, you know, small businesses, especially female-led businesses, is that they are genuinely customer-centric. You know, they think about, often, you know, they start as their own customers. They are really, you know, have that empathy with customers. You know, they're looking at their business through the customer's eyes. Maybe a lot of them because they started the business from a personal need they had themselves. So that was a catalyst to start. So there's a really close connection with the customer and understanding the customer. And I think when you've got that, it becomes quite foolproof, really, when we hit the difficult times, because, you know, you're in your customer's head. So you know if it's, you know, the customer wants to buy differently because you want to buy differently. So I think that sort of synergy that women-led small businesses have with customers is going to be really critical, and it's going to be a real asset going forward through this rocky time we're going to have.
Absolutely. And I remember, I'm going to talk about what you were talking about at the congregation, because it is a real, as you said, it's an asset. You know, what you're feeling, if you are your own customer, you know, when I think back to Sophie and myself starting us on the high street, we were our own customers. So you do have that advantage, rather than necessarily seeing a gap in the market, understanding that financially that might work. But actually down the line, you'll realize it's so much more difficult if you are not your own customer of your business. I'm always an optimist, and hopefully, you know, I really feel that people are going to value, as you just said, you've got to know your local community. I've got to know my local community even more. And I thought I knew it well. And I've spoken to the community about, you know, different ideas about how they might then participate in the new high street, or whatever that's going to be. You know, do they all club together and look at a shop, for instance, and they club together, they use the back for online sales, the front as a sort of brand face. And Mark Constantine was on from Lush, and he was talking about how the sort of 1930s customer service, that sort of different level where you're more emotionally connecting with your customer, is coming through. So many things that I feel that the high street was missing, and I know that the Chancellor's coming, you know, so many things are now happening with Boris's plans, etc. When you look at the high street when you were on it, and when you started out, Sahar, and you look now, and if you were doing it again, what are those things that you think for the high street, or that independent right now that's watching, or someone's thinking, okay, I'm going to get onto the high street? What would you say are your reflections based on what you're seeing at the moment?
I think, Holly, you know, a lot of the stuff we're used to buying online, but I think we still love to go and see the product. It is exactly as you say, that customer relationship, buying off someone, seeing it, getting it immediately, less commoditized in a way. So I think there's huge potential for the high street not to give you, you know, not for the small stores that are specially selected things. You know, it's stuff that you can't really get yourself, someone who's curated it for you. I think there's always room, and, you know, every high street's different. You know, we go a lot to Deal in Kent, and that's got a really proper gorgeous, I mean, I think it was named one of the most beautiful high streets in Britain, you know, tiny small shops. And I see how they prosper when, you know, they really know what the kind of local market wants, what's needed, and it's just filling in the gaps. And the beauty is that there are gaps everywhere the whole time. And I think when we go through this difficult time, actually, I think in a funny way, when you're going through more of a downturn, as inevitably will be going, that's where gaps come. Because when things are good, there are no gaps, right? Because everyone's set, and it's almost like it's already tightly set. But, you know, when things get a bit disrupted, as they have, that's where gaps in the market comes. So that's where opportunities are to give someone. And I think people are just longing for an experience, a shopping experience, a morning. I love it. I love going out shop. I really appreciate it now. Whereby in that frantic time I was, you know, internet. Now I just love that connection of seeing others and touching things. So, you know, there's always an opportunity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've got a few comments from the audience that's watching. Love of the North, agree, was a brilliant start to the Congregation of Inspiration. That's you. Calm in a Box, I love Sahar's podcast. Colony Lifestyle, this is so helpful already. Thank you. Glued to my laptop here. Shoes by Chanib, yes, less waste and buying from a person, not a big corporate. Now, I've got a few questions. If we could spend a minute or so on each one, because I've got a couple of more questions from my side. I own a coffee shop, and during the week, we're always being filled with people working on their laptops. Since reopening on Saturday, we've only had a few of the laptop gang in. How do you think coffee shop culture will change?
Yes, it's a very interesting question. You know, I think people are longing to get, you know, if you are stuck at home, if you can't go to the office, if a lot of the offices are closed for the short term, because I'm hoping they won't, it's that concept of the third place. You know, when we started Coffee Republic, I remember what was really exciting was they sort of called it the third place. The fact that you had home, you had the office, and there was somewhere else to go. Because if you think about it, back before the coffee revolution, you know, you couldn't really go anywhere else. You'd sort of sit in a restaurant, and so this idea that you would actually take your laptop, you'd go there, you'd make phone calls. It's not home. You've got out of home. You're getting a bit the buzzy atmosphere of other people, and I think that's going to be even more important, because I think, you know, for the people who've worked in offices all their lives, I know how much they've enjoyed the lockdown. A lot of people say for the first time they haven't been commuting, but it's going to get quite tiring after a while. And now the days are long, and, you know, we've been going towards spring and summer, but when it gets dark, it can be quite lonely just being stuck at home. So I think going to a local coffee place and hearing the buzz, seeing other people is going to be absolutely great. So I don't think it's going to change to that extent at all. You know, we are individuals. As humans, we're social beings. We want to be with other people. We get a lot, you know, it's very lonely being by ourselves. And especially as we go into September and the autumn, I think that's the third place concept of coffee shops is really going to come through again.
Ah, that's brilliant. I was just thinking when you were talking, it's almost like not home from home, but it's work from home. It's like it's the place that you go. But I love this concept. So hopefully for that coffee shop owner, that's really going to help. Mina Lima, how can shop and online be united? So basically, I think it's so for me and Lena, they've got this most unbelievable shopping experience. And I know a lot of people actually now are looking at their shopping experiences, and they're having to make sure that online is match fit now. You know, they've realized that if anything happens in the future, you know, they have to make sure. What do you think is that link? Have you got any ideas of that sort of experience that maybe people can have online that emulates the offline experience?
I mean, Holly, I can only say that, you know, for myself, is that I look at everything online, I have to confess. So, you know, I just can't imagine. So is this people who've already got a shop and are thinking of also?
Yeah, they basically got a phenomenal experience in a shop. So really, they would normally probably be driving people to have that. And I'm sure the whole high street, you know, not talking little people, the bigger people, you know, they didn't need to necessarily always rely on online, because their thing was offline. Their thing was coming into store. And so many people now are having to go, you know, shit, I need my online store to somehow give the same customer service, the same experience. And it's a challenging one, isn't it? Because there's just a very nature thing of you're not physically in a shop, and you know, you can't change that. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it just reminds me actually of the story of the Chapmans, you know, the couple that started Matches Fashion. And now, you know, the enormous matchesfashion.com that I think was recently sold for gosh how much. But they had their clothes shop in Wimbledon. And I think very early on, you know, they were just a couple. They loved fashion, and they had their following locally around Wimbledon. I think a bit sort of more the outskirts as well. But suddenly they said to each other, what if we put everything we've got on the shop online? And I just remember they just apparently, you know, started a very basic website and put every single of their clothes online, and it exploded because, of course, then, you know, it got exposure globally. There's no limit to what you can achieve online. So I think if you've got a really good base of the actual retail bricks and mortar store, going online is wonderful, because in a way you've got a shop front to the whole world, and it's amazing. And you know, the key we mustn't forget is your products have got to be special. You know,
Yeah.
Even if it's bricks and mortar, it's got to be something you can't get. It's got to be specially curated. You've got to really care about what you've got there at the right price and put it all together. And so if you can emulate that online, then it's like you've got a shop front on every single high street. That's how you've got to think about it. It's like you've got, shop fronts you can't even afford. Online gives you the opportunity is you just pretend as if you're at every single high street in the United Kingdom, but across the world. You're on Oxford Street, you're on Bond Street, you're in the best on Madison Avenue in New York. I mean, that's what online gives us the capability. So the opportunities are enormous, but you've got to, again, think about it carefully, think about where your brand stands, what you stand for as a brand. And that's what I ultimately believe is this idea that you've just got to know your brand. You've got to know why people come to you. And you've got to stick to that. You've got to be fanatical about being true to yourself, to what your brand is. And then that way you will distinguish yourself online. And it's the most extraordinary opportunity, I think.
I love that. Fanatical about who you are. You just always say these most phenomenally wise things, Sahar. Fanatical about who you are, because that is the thing. It's not necessarily about diversifying and watering down and all these sorts of things. And I interviewed Donna Wilson and for a podcast, and she does these extraordinary knitted goods, and she said, well, listen, I did go down the lines of putting my prints on lots of things, and I had a licensor, and it was everywhere, but I've gone back to my roots, because there are people who love Donna Wilson in every single city, in every single country around the world. So until I've got all of them, why would I diversify? And I think it's that thing, isn't it, of, thinking about what you've just said. You've got a shop everywhere in every high street. And just to add what you were saying about Matches, I think one of the things that Matches did very, very smartly was they stayed so true, more than potentially their competitor Net-a-Porter, is that the box arrived, and the box was unbelievably beautiful, and it was so distinctive, and I don't think they've changed that box ever. So you felt very much part of this journey that they were taking, but they always stayed true to what they did with such high sort of quality of what they curated. You always knew the customer service would be impeccable. So there were these things, isn't it, as a consumer, you want to rely on someone that they will never let you down. And I think that's potentially what Matches built.
Absolutely. And they were just true to themselves. They didn't change anything for online. They kept the character. Because, Holly, this actually reminds me of one of my favorite, I think, most powerful business books I've ever read is actually a very thin book, I think from the 80s or 90s, called The 12 Immutable Laws of Marketing by Al Ries. And I can send you the link that you can kind of put it on for everyone. And it's got 12 very simple laws. And the most important law is this law that you can't be everything to everyone. You've got to know what your DNA is, and you've got to stick to that, because you can't be all things to all people. And that's the danger people do when they go online. They think, oh, let me have everything. You're just not sure what they stand for, and you've got to actually, in a funny way, focus very narrowly, I think, in a business, and stick to something so people really get to know you and know they can get the best of that. And I think that's exactly as you say. It's just so critical. What I loved about Matches is they were just so honest. They said, everything we've got on the shop, we're just going to put online. It just makes so much sense. So that's how you've got to do your online. The way you think about your store, you've got to make sure that character is online. And it's possible to do that.
Yeah, God, that is... Yes, absolutely. Well, everything you're saying. At the Congregation of Inspiration, you talked about entrepreneurship being the new women's movement. And I couldn't agree more than this about this, because small businesses, basically what I've seen and what I'm hearing is potentially it was a side hustle. Potentially it wasn't their main thing. Now they're the main breadwinner. They found themselves in these circumstances. So I think we're going to hear so much of this coming forward. I think we're only at the beginning, actually, of hearing these stories. If we place ourselves in October when furloughing finishes, potentially there's going to be even more. Well, I know there will. And people don't really want to be maybe at the mercy of a paycheck. So I do feel that there's this wave, and I knew more than anything, said this at the congregation. What are your thoughts about this sort of right moment to start a business? You know, for people who are scared about doing it, for women who have that imposter syndrome, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think there's no better time than to start now, in a way. I mean, I just, you know, in a downturn, we started Coffee Republic in the early 90s downturn. And I was actually just reading in Forbes, there was this list of companies that started from Amazon to Airbnb to even General Motors to Hyatt Hotels to you started it. You know, so that is actually the time to start, in a way. So waiting for the good times, you know, is too late. There's no gaps again. It's a great time to start. And this idea that people have, you know, I meet so many women, as I'm sure you do, who say, I've got a business idea. And you're like, why are you not doing it? And they are waiting for some perfect moment. You know, they're waiting to get it all right. You know, and they just keep thinking about it. And it's just there, this idea of starting. And they never do it. And it's just such a pity, because if only they knew that they have all the skills they need to start a business. They've got everything it takes. And one of the most important things I think women have is we are incredibly resourceful as women. Now, you know, I don't like gender stereotypes, but I actually genuinely, I've never met a woman who's not resourceful. You know, we can just, because we're resourceful around the home, you know, women can get anything, you know, they're just the creativity of woman's brain comes with the sort of multitasking in a way, doesn't it? You can get anything from anyone, any information. You've got 100 things on the go. These qualities are absolutely critical in starting a business. And yet we're not using them enough because we're not confident enough. So I think just knowing that, listen, you've got what it takes, just go for it. Just start, and, you know, start small. I think, Holly, I'm sure you'll agree that, you know, people just wait till they start big. They think about it. Don't think about it. Just start doing the smallest prototype. Just put it in a physical form. Get it out of your brain and do a little prototype in physical form so you see what it looks like, so you can visualize it. And then just go from there, day by day. You know what I mean? It's not the big jump you take. Just take little jumps every day, and then you realize you're sort of there.
I couldn't agree more. It's almost like what I was just thinking when you were talking. It's like Intel Inside, you know, that dun, 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 dun. And it's almost like the woman has got the chip in there already. So they can do it all. But plus they have Intel Inside, which is they can multitask everything. So they have this inbuilt chip that they don't quite realize that actually is a very useful chip when starting a business, isn't it? And I say the same, Sahar, and not as eloquently as you, but I do say to people, congratulations, today you're starting. Go and buy the URL, go and write to the bank manager, there isn't a sort of confetti bomb moment that you start. There is this moment that you just say, I'm not going to think about it anymore. I'm going to take that plunge. And you have that amazing saying, don't you, about that leap, don't you?
Yeah, a leap and then that will appear. But even better in that context, it's in my other motto is actually, anything worth doing is worth doing badly. You see, because you've just got to start doing it, and it's going to be bad and it's not going to be perfect, but you've got to do it. You know, if you're thinking about making a product, make it in your kitchen, and, you know, kind of literally put a little label on it so you can see it, so you can show people. Because I think it's almost like energetically, once you get the idea out of your head into something physical, you can see it. And then when you make that first phone call, as you say, when you go and see the bank manager, when you get the rejection, you've got no idea. You've started the momentum. And I think ideas are like, they're almost like trapped in your head, and they're never going to get momentum unless you do something physical. So write the business plan, go and see someone, do a prototype. There are a million ways. And then once you start, you realize actually you're almost chasing the idea itself. It's sort of got its own momentum, and you're just like following it rather than, but the worst place is thinking about it. And I think women think too much. We spend too much time thinking, because that brain is that sort of multitasking brain. It's very active, and it's just very chatty. There's a lot of chatter inside, and we get scared, and then we psych ourselves out. And it's just, I just literally just want to press delete and just do and not think. I don't think men think as much as we do, Holly.
I've got sort of good evidence of that in my home. Yes, I think anyone here, it's not male bashing here, but I'm just saying that, you know, there is a lot of thinking going on in this brain, and I'm sure we can all testify to, even if we wanted to arrange a night out, you know, who books a babysitter, who thinks that, feeds the dog, does the thing, and they're still picking out a shirt. Anyway, we won't go into that. But I just wanted to ask a couple more. I've got a couple more questions. Shoes by Chanib. So true. Everyone says I'm obsessed about the shoes I design, and be here in my shop, and I meet and sell, and I talk to my customers, and I fit my customers, and I need to be totally married to what I do. And it's absolutely right, isn't it? Married to what you do is the best way. So much love and engagement, by the way, from the community, Sahar. And just so they are all saying, what a powerful, beautiful woman you are. Dottie Red Studio, I'm jumping up and down here with excitement. As a single mum, mature, this is super exciting. And my other life rock says, a friend of mine used to say, just fucking do it, over coffee once when I was telling her about my ideas and procrastinating. She was right, and I've been learning on the go ever since. So I think so many people say the same. Two questions. One of your top tips is don't put your work face on, be 100% yourself. Since working from home, I feel like I don't have my work face on, but I'm still not 100% myself. How do you start being yourself at work?
As in working from home in this scenario, presumably.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I just think now with technology, actually, it's not even this concept of, you know, work, life, you know, it's all there. It's all the same. So I think even this concept of work-life balance has slightly become obsolete because, you know, in a way we're getting emails on the way to work. And when you imagine, people used to talk about work-life balance when you couldn't actually work until you were at the office because that's where the phone calls were. I mean, there was one phone number at the office. So, you know, there wasn't this, whereas now it's also blended so much. And I think, you know, authenticity is absolutely critical. You've got to be yourself. You've got to, you know, it's sort of working from the heart, really. That's the way of working. That's the way. I mean, big businesses where I consult or used to consult before COVID, I have to say, you know, they all talk about, listen, how can we work from the heart? How can we have real empathy? How can we be more real in what we do? Not business-like. This idea of being business-like, I think is actually rubbish. You've got to be true to yourself at all times. You've got to be passionate. You've got to love what you do. Like the comment you had before about the lady saying married to her shoes. That is the most business-like you can be. Obsessed with what you do, loving it, being your own first customer. That's what business-like. Business-like doesn't mean, you know, being all serious and looking at numbers. It means genuinely being in the head of your customer, really obsessing about the product. That's how businesses are built. They're not built from, you know, having a work face on or anything like that.
Oh, it's refreshing stuff. You've written a number of brilliant books, and most recently, and you're talking about that now, and I'd love to talk about this, Startup Forever, how to build startup culture in a big company. And of course, I know you're utterly passionate about the magic of small, but often I feel that it's interesting. Sort of small businesses are looking to big businesses, right? Almost acting as if, oh my gosh, you must know what you're doing. And what's interesting there is that you've written a whole book about almost big businesses thinking more like small business founders. What attributes of small businesses do you think is that magic that, you know, and everyone must buy your book and think, and Sahar's books are brilliant, please buy them. But what do you think is that magic that small businesses hold that they potentially don't realize that they're holding?
Okay, so magic is actually in this, I think the easiest way is to go through the 10 in a way, habits I've got in my book about small business. So number one, you don't depersonalize customers. So in a small business, you know, you haven't got, you can't afford to do market research on your customer. They're not an archetypal data or a statistic. They're just the customer you're selling to. So don't depersonalize customers, become them. Number two is get out, you know, don't sit in the office. And small businesses haven't got the issue because they haven't got offices, right? Most people are working from home or some storage unit at the back of their store. So don't get stuck. Go out there. And by out there, I mean where your customer is. Go out there on the high street looking at what other people are buying, what your competitors are doing. So go out there. Don't get stuck. Number 3 is don't let your expertise blind you. You know, one of the biggest things I believe, Holly, I've probably mentioned, is what I call the importance of being clueless. You know, a lot of small businesses are clueless about what they were doing. They just did it because they just, you know, felt the need as a customer. They didn't have skills or experience. You know, a lot of people start businesses, they've got no idea how it's done or what the industry.
Or they were naive. You know, naivety is beautiful.
Exactly, that naivety is exactly what got them there. So you know, forget about how things become clueless. So I encourage big companies to consciously become clueless. Bootstrapping is something that I'm sure everyone does. The Blue Peter way of making 2 + 3 = 5, being resourceful. You know, you can't do things the perfect way. You know, you do them on your printer, you bake the stuff at home. So, I mean, you get someone, you know, it's just the way we put stuff together. We improvise, don't we? You know, improvise. Don't be scared of getting a no. You know, without realizing it, if you look at yourselves as entrepreneurs, you know, you're pretty brave out there. People have said no. You know, I'm sure everyone's family, you know, everyone's always against it. It's like an obstacle course, isn't it? But you go through that obstacle course. Whereas in a big company, they're always avoiding the no. They're avoiding sort of, you know, failure. You know, don't worry about failure and be yourself, you know, head, heart and soul. Be in the business because it's fun when you're that, because we're not automatons, are we? You know, we're not a robot to switch on and go to work. We're human beings going to work. So be human around the workplace.
Oh, gosh. Gosh, you're good. You're so good.
God.
You're so good. I just get this. I just want to absorb you. I want Sahar in my pocket. It's like that's that thing that you have. I've got a final question actually from actually a few more comments. Catherine Prevost. Sahar is an inspiration to us all. Brown Cow events. If you don't do it, someone else will. And that is true, and mini mindfuls. I love this topic. Be yourself, trust your instincts, and go forward. And I have a final question from second to final. How did you stop being scared of failure? I'm terrified.
Well, the only way to stop being scared of failure is not think about failure. Because basically, if you think about it, you're going to go down a road that you will never be seen again, especially with our brain, our chatty brain. You just don't want to even want to go there. And it's about somehow, you know, I sort of call it almost pressing the delete button and not thinking about it. Because, you know, the way I think about it is I can sit there thinking about failure and thinking about option B or whatever people call failure. But what a waste of time, right? Because like, we're on this earth for such a short time. And if you start thinking about failure, you're just wasting your time. So, you know, I have a lot of rituals not to, because I'm not saying I love failure. My God, no, I have got, you know, my own neuroses. I fear stuff, but I'm always disciplining my mind not to fear. You know, not to go there, because it's a really negative place to go there. And once you go there, it is a whole world out there. You'll never see the light again. So my advice is you just got to put that away. And it's this discipline of mind. I mean, what I do now, my new thing actually is I go for a walk for an hour every morning, and I'm always listening to inspirational podcasts, because not podcasts or stuff on, you know, whatever, Marianne Williamson or inspirational people, Joe Dispenza on YouTube, all about getting the right mindset. You know, Tony Robbins has got a brilliant 10-minute morning thing about getting out, because what you got to understand is we all go down to fail. If we're not disciplining, if we're not trying not to think about failure, if we're not trying not to be fearful, we'll all go down there. It's how the human brain is made, to be fearful. So we've got to be super disciplined not to be fearful, not to think about failure. It's literally, and I exercise, I listen to podcasts, I meditate, you name it, I journal, because you just don't want to go there.
You don't want to go there. And what an amazing tip to sort of end on there, because actually what you're saying is our brains are the default is to go there. The default, that's almost where the imposter syndrome's coming from, isn't it? That's where it was born. You know, we're born, aren't we? Fight and flight. It's a whole thing. It's our whole body. Everything we're doing is to protect ourselves, protect. So actually to get out of that, it's got to be an active and you've got to participate every day in getting yourself forward. And I think that has never been said before to this community, that it's actually it has to be almost part of your business mantra every morning, your business one, not even your personal one if you don't want to, because we're always on the bottom of our to-do list. But actually for a business, you've got to get yourself into that mindset. And it's
because you're never going to get the reassurance if you're thinking about failure. No one's ever going to tell you you're not going to fail. You're never going to prove to yourself you're not going to fail. Nothing's going to take the fear away. You know, only you can. And the only way to do it is not to deal with the fear. Just not think about it. You just got to put it aside and then see the joy that life gives you. But you've got to put it aside. You just can't. And with the female brain especially, because we've got this internal chatter the whole time, is just, and I think a lot of women think that is the real voice. But I don't think that fear voice is the real voice, you see. I think, we think because it's serious and it gives us the realistic bad news, we think we should listen to it, and that we're being flaky if we don't listen to it. And it's taken me quite a few years to realize that voice is actually, that is the wrong voice. It's not telling you the truth. It's not trying to protect you. It's just, as you say, the default that we shouldn't go there. It's just a complete waste of time.
Oh my God, you're like nectar. Tell me.
You're like, I love to speak to you forever.
Oh, me too. Tell me, before you go, from what you're seeing small businesses doing at the moment and what you would wish them for the rest of this year, when you think that they've got quite a year coming up, and then we go into sort of 2021, which feels like the greatest unknown, doesn't it? What would be the one thing that you would say to hold on to?
God, actually, I felt emotional, Holly, because I just know how difficult it's been for people with live businesses. I mean, it just breaks my heart to think how it's just all gone, and how difficult it is. But the thing is, it's sort of almost, if I can say, like, it's a cliche, but it's the heart that makes it great. You've got it in you. You've got everything it takes. Just don't panic. Don't buy into all this news you hear. Don't buy into all that sort of fear stuff. Don't buy into all the negativity. Just go back to your heart every day and think, you know what? This is a business you love. Stick with it. Fight for it. Know that you know your customers really well. And just fight for it. You've got it in you. It takes a bit of persistence, but once you get out of it, you'll be so happy you did it, and you'll write books about this journey, because I think every business owner is going to be on a phenomenally difficult but also incredibly rewarding journey. It won't be easy, but I think it's going to be worth it.
Oh, Sahar, honestly, just like book me in for the next 10 hours. I just want to be here with you. I'm going to let you go, but really everyone is just raving about you. I just so want to do more with you. Every time I'm with you, I'm just like, we're bonded.
Me too.
Thank you, bless you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, everyone,
Sahar, and everyone is saying thank you as well. It's so kind of you. I'm now going to summarize you and make you blush. But for now, you can thank you for your time.
Lovely. Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye. I absolutely adore that woman. It's just every time she talks, I just think she says these most beautiful things, and also I never heard them before. She always comes at things in that slightly different way, and that's why it's so addictive to meet phenomenal founders. They've got their own way of thinking. So I'm not going to summarize every time everything everyone said, because you can watch the IGTV. You can watch it not only live now, well, it will go be not live, but you know what I mean, it will be there for 24 hours, but then we'll cut it for next week, and Sahar will live on my IGTV forevermore, so you can really watch that video. But I want to almost now say that my summaries are going to be sort of 3 things that I've pulled out of this. One is a female-led business. You have this basically superpower, and Sahar spoke about it unbelievably well at the Congregation of Inspiration. You are your own customer. You have this ridiculous benefit that you don't quite realize. So many businesses out there will be spotting a gap in the market, or they're going to try and compete. You know, they see someone has done this and they've made a load of money. I'm going to do this and make a load of money, not because it came out of them as a passion, but because they see it. Actually, what Sahar's talking about is the fact that us women have a tool inbuilt. If we are our own consumers, and I likened it to the Intel inside, we have this chip inside of us that already is there, being able to multitask, being able to be in the consumer's shoes. Do not underestimate that. You know, Sahar's talking about this new way of sort of talking. She goes to big corporates and they are all asking, how do we become a startup mentality? And she's basically saying, you know, you need to fall in love with your company, live it, passion, obsess about it. What did she say? Fanatical about it. That was, yeah. Fanatical is actually my second point I wanted to talk about, is that language, that word. You know, when I think about Sir John Hegarty, and he talked about this absolute sort of this passion and being absolutely addicted to your idea, and obsessive, and basically he just couldn't. It was this word, and that I can't frigging remember, but basically Sahar is saying exactly the same thing. It's being fanatical about your business, being true to your own brand, translate it into all of your experience as a customer, so be it that online or offline, but it's that fanatic sort of mentality, obsessive mentality, and it's just this thing, I can't tell you, it's magnetic. Never lose it. And if you don't feel that about your company, that is where you've got to ask yourself the question. Drop your tools today, do nothing else, but ask yourself why you're not fanatical about your business. Because until you have that Duracell battery pumping that out, there is something that's going to go amiss. The third thing I wanted to say is basically this sort of idea of failure, and this idea that we all, I think it's just such an amazing thing. She just spoke about that default being that you are going to fail, default being worry. That is what our minds are built to do. My son's reading Sapiens at the moment, and if anyone hasn't read Sapiens, you've got to read it, and then you're going to ask the question, why doesn't every single child get taught this in every single school? But anyway, you know, we are built from where we have been created and where our ancestry comes from. We are in this world where we still are fearing failure. We're still protecting ourselves. And if you think like that, if you think every single morning your brain is going to go to the default of failure, then what are you putting in place? Sahar goes on an hour's walk. She listens to Tony Robinson. She listens to podcasts. She meditates. She's fully conscious that the brain is going to try and take her somewhere. So what are you doing in your daily routine as a business ritual? What are you doing to make sure your brain stays out of that? Now, you know what? We can't do everything. We can't eat granola bars and stand on our heads and do business. But can you give yourself 10 minutes, just 10 minutes every day in the morning where you go, this is my moment where I am rewiring for the day. And I think that that was such a good piece of advice. And as you said, a complete waste of time. Failure is a complete waste of time to think about it, because, you know, ultimately you should be more concentrating on not failing. So just don't think about the failing. It's all about you winning, or you know, the positive mindset. Anyway, oh my gosh, absolutely love that woman. Thank you everyone here, because it is so lovely, you know, for Sahar, first IGTV, she's seeing all that love coming up on the screen. For me to just know that you're there, and I'm able to slightly see them if my eyesight is okay, but it is just unbelievably, yeah, it's just unbelievably special, isn't it? I want to say all of you must join me not only tomorrow for Alex Munro, but also on Friday at 12:30 for the new improved slight tea party in my coffee shop. But I can't wait, and thank you all so much. And also thank you to Dell. Dell is now bringing you these expert moments, and I can't tell you what a fantastic partner they are of Holly & Co. After SME SOS, they just said, you know what, this community cannot live without this. And so Dell are now supporting all of these expert conversations that you're going to see. And as we know, it will be on the podcast next week. And as we know, we'll have it as a cut video for you. But thank you so much, Dell, for continuing to supporting this community and for giving me moments like I just had with Sahar. Lots of love to you all.